Good morning. I'm Zoe Towns, and it's a delight to be here. It has been a real honor to help support this event with the Atlantic. Any morning that begins with Desmond Meade and Deanna Hoskins and Pat Nolan is a morning that brings us a little closer to where we need to be on this issue, I think. So we're grateful for that. So quickly, Forward.us is a political advocacy organization that works to advance immigration and criminal justice reforms. We believe these are two man-made systems, and these systems interrupt opportunity for hundreds of millions of Americans and separate far too many families. So we all know, and we've heard today, that a big part of driving change is in correctly and better defining the problem. And we hear a lot about, and we kind of came up in this field hearing a lot about the over 2 million people who are currently behind bars in jails or prisons in America. And we know that this is a massive undercounting of the actual impact of incarceration on this country. As whether we're taxpayers, whether we are thinking about ourselves as participants in a democracy whose promise and whose legitimacy is daily undermined by a lack of justice and a lack of freedom and a lack of fairness. These are all ways in which these systems are interrupting the promise of who we can be. So with that in mind, we embarked on a project about a year ago with Cornell University to try to count for the first time how many people have a family member, a direct family member who has spent time behind bars, and trying to capture what that experience looks like for those many Americans. And Carlton will talk a little bit more about that, but I was moved today to hear Mr. Lewis say that we need to think about who these people belong to and who belong to them. And that's what we've been thinking a lot about at Forward, about family and how to use family as a frame to understand the ways in which these systems are undermining us, and also the ways in which we can hopefully change and empower ourselves to be better. So Carlton Miller is a colleague and a friend at Forward.us. Before coming to Forward, Carlton worked in the governor's office in Louisiana, where he ushered in and oversaw a really tremendous sentencing reform bill that moved Louisiana from the top incarcerating state to the second top incarcerating state, but we're going to keep moving. Yeah. And it was a really fantastic sentencing reform bill that brought home thousands of Louisianans to their families. So Carlton, tell us more about family.
All right, thanks, Zoe. So hi everybody, good morning. I am Carlton Miller, Senior Associate at Forward.us. Here to have a quick conversation about families and the impact that families are facing as a result of incarceration. But before I do, I kind of just want to get to know the audience a little bit. So by showing of hands, no pressure at all, how many of you are happy to be here today? All right, great. That's everybody. That's an easy question. How many of you all were happy to hear from Tony Lewis and Deanna Hoskins and Matthew Charles and Pat Nolan this morning? All right, great. So here's a serious question to ponder. How many of you know someone or have a family member that has spent time behind bars? Wow, that's astounding. You're not alone. Our report, titled Every Second, finds that nearly half of all the adults in the United States have had an immediate family member that has spent time behind bars. Everyone that rose your hand today, you're one of the 113 million that has been impacted by incarceration. Over the past few years, we have, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the slide to work. All right. Over the past few years, Forward US has been working to reform our incarceration system. And we saw that this was no small matter. Having a loved one incarcerated leaves you with a high financial, high health toll. We saw that over the past 4 decades that there was a massive rise in our jail and prison population. So what does this mean? This means that the impacts of incarceration has gone beyond the prison walls and has touched every single one of the persons that has raised their hand today. We saw that in our report that incarceration impacts all communities. For instance, communities that are Republican and Democrats face impact just the same. But we know by fact that all communities don't bear this burden the same. We just heard from several panelists, they talked about the interactions with law enforcement in certain communities. And research backs up that communities where African Americans are present and Latinos, that they're more likely to be stopped, arrested, prosecuted, and incarcerated for longer periods of time. Therefore, it's not surprising that Blacks are 50% more likely to have an immediate family member that's incarcerated. But I'm not here today to throw a bunch of statistics at you. I can talk about data all day. I'm here to give you all a greater appreciation for our report every second. I'm here to tell you a story about a young man who watched his family suffer as a result of his eldest brother's incarceration. I'm here to show you that these individuals use these experiences to fuel their fire and to make change in their communities. Today, I'm here to leave you with my story. It is my hope that it informs you, but it also inspires you about the urgency of now. So, with that being said, I'll leave you all with my story. Thank you.
The day I got home and my mom told me that my brother was going back to prison. It was a day I will never forget. Those 2 years when he was out were the happiest of my life. I remember him coming home and just jumping into his arms. I was about 6 years old at the time. He would always make sure that I had school supplies, I had the proper clothing for school. For 2 years, I was used to my eldest brother, being there. Just remembering my mom telling me that my brother, may not be coming back home. It was surreal to see my brother later that evening on TV, seeing my mom crying. That was a huge change for all of us. My mom was a single parent. She worked multiple jobs, including night shifts. She went through financial troubles trying to pay for an attorney and also take care of our family. She took strength from her faith and instilled that in all of us. But it's hard. Just the other week, for the first time, my mom told me, she's getting tired. She's turning 70 this upcoming year, and having to drive those lonely roads by herself, really takes a toll on her.
And you go down about 20-some miles and you run into the prison. It has its own zip code. That's a lonely ride. But when I would get to see him, I would put a smile on my face. I wouldn't let him see this pain, the stress. I had to be strong for my son.
Giving life updates to my brother, whether it was football games, the moment I met my now wife, and the dates that we went on, the wedding planning that I went through, the honeymoon that we went on. It's hard on a family living from phone call to phone call, visit to visit, paycheck to paycheck, year after year. I've grown up, worked hard. My brother's situation inspired me to study law. His sentence would likely be shorter if he were convicted of the same crime in a different state than Louisiana. It's been a long, hard road to get where I am today, but I've embraced that difficulty. The way I see it, the highs and lows in a person's life make up the shape of a key that you can use to unlock the door to opportunity, to liberty. And I call that key hope.
I've gone from being a lawyer in Louisiana to working in state government to fighting for policy reform on a federal level in Washington, D.C.
And I might not have my brother physically here with me now. My mother might not have her son, but these experiences provide us with an opportunity to continue to share this story and give folks an understanding of how our criminal justice system has truly impacted our citizens. So let's stop arguing and start fixing.
I'm Carlton, and I'm one in 2 Americans that have been impacted by the incarceration crisis.